Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. Today, we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Wau. In January 1943, Japanese forces sailed from Rabaul on the island of New Britain, disembarked at Lae on the east coast of New Guinea, and began advancing onwards towards the Australian base at Wau. A race began with the Japanese moving overland, hampered by the terrain, and the Australians moving by air and hampered by the weather. A mining hub prior to the Second World War, Wau had been occupied by the 2nd 5th Independent Company and the New Guinea Volunteer Rifles, known as Kanga Force, since the beginning of 1942. This force was later joined by the 2nd 7th Independent Company. With the large Japanese force now threatening the small garrison, the 17th Brigade began its transfer by air from Milne Bay into Wau to bolster the defences. The 2nd 6th Battalion first encountered the Japanese force at Wandami on the 28th of January. Bad weather that day stopped further troops and equipment from being ferried into Wau. On the 29th of January, 80 years ago today, with the Japanese launching their attack on Wau, the weather cleared, allowing transport aircraft to bring in troops from the 2nd 5th and 2nd 7th Battalions. Much needed equipment, including 2 dismantled 25-pounder guns, along with reinforcements from the 2nd 3rd Independent Company and the 7th Machine Gun Battalion, were also flown in. By the 4th of February, threatened with encirclement, and with all hopes of capturing Wau gone, the Japanese were forced to withdraw. Australian forces suffered 349 men killed, wounded or missing. The Japanese casualties were far higher, with an estimated 1,200 men killed and an unknown number wounded or missing. Today we remember Wau. We pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Thomas Gordon. Thomas Gordon was born on the 21st of October 1912 in Burton, Queensland, the son of John and Hannah Gordon. By the time of the Second World War, Gordon was working as a barman in Perth. Thomas Gordon enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 9th of July 1941. He joined a training battalion and in August was transferred to reinforcements for the 2nd 28th Battalion. After a period of leave, Private Gordon embarked from Fremantle on the 7th of November. Arriving at Port Tewfik in Suez, Gordon and his comrades travelled to Palestine by train, where they continued training. In late December, Gordon was evacuated to hospital suffering from rubella, also known as German measles. After treatment and recovery, he rejoined his unit, only to be evacuated a week later, suffering from mumps. Having recovered, in February 1942, Private Gordon was transferred to the 2nd 7th Battalion. After taking part in the unsuccessful defence of Greece against German invasion, the 2nd 7th Battalion was rebuilt in Palestine before leaving the Middle East in March. Between mid-March and mid-July, it formed part of a force defending Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka, from possible attack. In Australia, in early August 1942, Gordon and his battalion trained in preparation for fighting the Japanese in New Guinea. Concentrated around Seymour in Victoria, a welcome home parade was held in Melbourne, after which the men moved by rail to Greta in New South Wales. A short term later, there was a further move north to Queensland, from where the battalion embarked on the troopship Tasman in mid-October, bound for New Guinea. At Milne Bay, the battalion undertook further training before being committed to the fighting around Wau in January 1943. After defeating Japanese forces in the Kokoda Trail campaign and around Boonagona, the Australians were ready to begin limited offensive operations in New Guinea. A small mining settlement in the Buula Valley, Wau stood astride a route from Japanese bases at Lae and Salamaua to the Australian base at Port Moresby. The area was destined to be contested. From March until August 1942, Australian guerrilla troops, codenamed Kanga Force, operated along the tracks between Wau and Salamaua, but a Japanese drive caused them to withdraw behind Wau and set the town alight. The Japanese, however, had no intention at this stage of advancing further than Wau. As guerrilla operations continued, Wau was reoccupied by the Australians and infrastructure restored. In January 1943, as Private Gordon and his comrades arrived to reinforce Kanga Force, the Japanese began operations to prevent the Australians using Wau as a base. Japanese movement towards Wau was detected on the 21st of January, and several companies of the 2nd 6th Battalion were deployed east of the town to block their approach. The first contact with the attacking force occurred on the 28th of January. That night, the Japanese moved within 3 kilometres of Wau, then defended by little more than 2 companies from the 2nd 5th Battalion. Over the next 2 days, reinforcements consisting of the rest of the 2nd 5th and Private Gordon's 2nd 7th were flown into Wau airfield. With the airfield under fire, the troops went straight into action as they left their planes. The main Japanese attack fell upon Wau before dawn. Dogged resistance by the Australians robbed the Japanese of the momentum, and the 2nd 7th launched a counter-attack late in the afternoon that marked the turning point in the Battle of Wau. As reinforcements continued to fly in over the following days, the Australian forces began a series of attacks to edge forward of their defence positions at Wau. By the 6th of February, the Japanese were retreating. This success, however, would not be celebrated by Private Thomas Gordon. Initially reported as wounded in action and missing on the 29th of January, he was later confirmed to have been killed in action. Thomas Gordon was 30 years old. Initially buried near where he fell, his remains were later reburied at the military cemetery at Wau and then at Lae War Cemetery, where they remain today under the inscription, "His duty nobly done." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Thomas Gordon, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières, or in the low scrub of Glee, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. And we wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.